If you're the kind of person who spends more time tweaking a mix than scrolling through specs, you know the biggest fear is ending up with a console that looks great on paper, but becomes a headache every time you try to actually use it. You want something that fits into a cramped rehearsal room, stays stable on a tour bus, and lets you get a solid mix without having to hire a full-time tech. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The StudioLive Series SE16 tries to promise exactly that, but the real question is whether the promise translates into daily peace of mind. First off, the physical footprint of the unit is where the portable claim starts to feel genuine. At roughly the size of a typical 19-inch rack module, it slides into a road case or a small studio rack without forcing you to rearrange cabling. That means a freelance engineer can pack it with a laptop, a couple of microphones, and a PA system, and be ready to roll in under 10 minutes. In a real-world scenario, I've seen a local church use a single StudioLive SE to handle both the worship band and the spoken word segments, swapping between two submixes with the press of a button. The flexibility of a 40-channel layout in that size is a practical win for anyone who isn't running a full-scale theater. The console's digital heart is built around PreSonus's AVB networking ecosystem, which is Milan certified. In plain English, that means you can daisy-chain other AVB-enabled devices like stage boxes or outboard processors over a single Ethernet cable and keep everything in sync. For a small venue that already has an AV-ready stage box, the console becomes the hub you can control from the front-of-house desk or a laptop. The hidden trade-off, however, is that you need a proper AVB switch to get the most out of it. A regular unmanaged switch will still pass audio, but you lose the automatic clocking and device discovery that makes setup truly painless. One of the most talked about features is the integrated 6464 USB 2.0 interface. It works both ways. You can send up to 64 channels of multi-track audio straight to a DAW, and you can pull back 64 channels of playback into the mix. In a home studio session where a producer wants to record each instrument on its own track, this eliminates the need for an external audio interface. The catch is that USB 2.0, while reliable, doesn't have the bandwidth of newer USB 3.0 or Thunderbolt options, so you might notice a slight increase in latency when you push the full channel count. For most live sound situations, the latency is negligible, but in a critical recording session, it's something to keep an eye on. When it comes to shaping sound, the console offers 7 state-space modeled EQs and 8 vintage-inspired compressors. Those compressors aren't just a gimmick. They give a bit of analog warmth that you can dial in on a vocal or a snare without having to rack a separate unit. In practice, I've heard a small indie band use the vintage compressor on a live drum kit and get a tighter, punchier low end that sits nicely in a PA mix. The downside is that the selection is limited compared to larger digital desks that provide dozens of effects and dynamic processors. If you rely heavily on built-in reverbs or multiband dynamics, you'll probably need to supplement the console with external gear. The Universal Control app adds a layer of convenience that feels almost mandatory for today's mobile workflow. From a tablet or phone, you can pull up any channel, mute groups, or adjust the master fader while you're actually in the room, not stuck at the front desk. For a podcaster who records a roundtable discussion in a coffee shop, the ability to mute a participant with a tap is a time saver. The trade-off is that you're dependent on a stable Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection. In venues with spotty wireless coverage, the app can become sluggish. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to test before you rely on it for a live show. So, who should seriously consider the StudioLive Series SE16? If you're a freelance engineer, a small to medium band, a podcaster, or a church media team that needs a compact, rack-mountable console with decent channel count and solid USB multitrack capability, this unit hits a sweet spot. The built-in EQs and compressors give you immediate tonal control, and the AVB networking makes future expansion realistic without a massive upfront investment. On the other hand, if you run a large venue that routinely mixes 60-plus inputs, or if you need a sprawling palette of built-in effects, you might feel constrained. Also, if you're on a shoestring budget, the price point of a 40-channel digital console can be steep compared to a modest analog mixer that still gets the job done for a simple gig. In everyday use, the console feels like a middle ground between a full-blown digital mixing surface and a portable analog board. It doesn't try to be everything for everyone, and that focus is actually its biggest strength. You get a reliable, network-ready platform that lets you grow.